My name is Ceci Arango. We are currently at the Caldas Art Museum in Colombia at my mid-career survey titled entreLAZADA, which in English can be translated as interlaced. My work stems from childhood memories from which a recurring motif crops up throughout my career as it is cast and reconfigured as both an art object and an object of design. Manizales Colombia is a city known for its cultural events and a center of coffee farming. It has its historic origins in the colonization of the Colombian departamento or state of Antioquia, which originated with the Spanish conquest and colonization. In this case, we can claim that Manizales is a twice colonized city. During my childhood and throughout the history of the city, there has been a widespread appreciation for the cultural heritage of Europe. Manizales, although a culturally rich city, was bewildering to me during my early years, as I was born with a recognizable Afro descent trait. I was born with this kinky head of hair, which despite today's wider cultural acceptance, as a child I felt it was a source of personal repudiation. Others wanted to and tried to change me, but this made me want to connect with ancestral African cultures, which were shamefully undervalued, just as I had felt undervalued as a child. What prompted a kinship to the Afro-Colombian heritage later brought me closer to other indigenous and campesino or peasant cultures. With my work, I am an advocate for many undervalued communities and those traditions that clash with a Western idea of industrial development that embraces a similar futuristic mindset with which I was indoctrinated in school. I studied industrial design as an undergraduate and pursued 2 master's degrees in design management and fine arts, respectively. Over time, I became a weaver of ideas, practices, and communities. Similarly, as I am a composite of African hair and Caucasian skin, my work is also a woven construct. It is for the same reason that my show is titled entreLAZADA, or interlaced. There is a palpable entwining in my thought process and in my ethnic history. I am of Spanish descent, tracing my ancestry to the Sephardic Jews, and like many Colombians, I am a mixture of different racial groups and ethnicities. I am grateful for this special invitation to exhibit my work in my hometown. Precisely 30 years after the start of my professional career, especially to Elvira Escobar de Restrepo, the museum director. So, as I represent an interweaving of cultures, my work is also a crossing of communities, practices, and ideas. In my projects, there is the emergence of an Afro soul, an indigenous soul, a campesino soul, and a vulnerable soul, and I combine them in tandem with the communities and cultures of power. The show begins with 2 works of art. The sculpture titled Bambusa from 1994 is a structure based on ancestral indigenous peasant and, of course, African designs, and also on contemporary concrete designs. I use iron rods and I weave them just like a hut, a temple, or a maloca, which is a large communal house used by the indigenous of the Amazon, securing them with coiled wire. Also at the start of the show, there is a cabinet called the Mapale wardrobe from 1993. I had just arrived from Italy after completing my master's degree in Milan, which was then known as the epicenter of contemporary design. I wanted to make a wardrobe that was the antithesis of that. Mapale is made of MACANA, a type of palm wood used in traditional farmhouses in Caldas, also used to manufacture simple weapons such as indigenous blowguns. For me, the MACANA has become a very important medium, and I am a staunch advocate of its sustainable harvest. The MACANA wood is a material signifier of my work, just like my Afro-Colombian hair and my affinity for indigenous heritage. I wave my flag for it in support of the right to exist in a world that invalidated me as a child, and that now, as an adult, I see as it wrongfully disregards indigenous peoples. Afro-descendants, and campesinos. The mapalé wardrobe is one of the most significant pieces within my body of work. Later, I worked on a project titled ANIMALMAS, a series of sculptures made collaboratively with blacksmiths in the community of Romani people settled in Bogota. In these pieces, pots and pot handles from the gypsy pottery trade were reinterpreted as stitches and collaboratively turned into elaborate woven art pieces. This generated a collection based also on pre-Hispanic goldsmithing, which foregrounded the significance of assorted gold alloys to the indigenous peoples. The subject of animas, or souls, was meant as a commentary between the vulnerability of my soul and the power structures in which I live and must navigate. After my work with the Romani community, I wanted to continue to knit and weave in my own studio. I continued to labor with industrial materials using weaving techniques traditionally associated with feminine crafts and with delicate fabrics and fine threads. I worked on the Threads of Life, or HILOS de Vida project, a series of embroideries with multiple stitching methods in materials such as iron, bronze, aluminum, and copper. These materials are incorporated into the PUNTO de CRUZ project, which is labeled literally as the title says, about to be crucified, or my soul is about to be crucified. The cross stitch is used as a double entendre for its symbolism and craft technique. My design work continues to develop in tandem to my sculpture work. There is a critical armchair in the chronology of my work that dates back to 1993, which is the Corocora stool. It originated during my tenure at Expo Artesanías, inspired by the artisanal basketry technique of the guacamayas, which consists of a roll or spiral of esparto grass surrounded by fique. The weave is quite thick, and I wanted to apply it to furnishings, knowing they would require great thickness and strength. I created the Corocora stool because at the time, there was a ubiquitous and memorable advertising campaign by Ecopetrol, our state oil company, that featured the Corocora heron. Shortly afterwards, I made a stool with the legs like a heron, inspired also by the caruru, or base structure of the balay basket from the Cubeo peoples, another indigenous object. Corocora is a well-known piece, declared an icon of Colombian design according to Segundo Acto magazine, published by the Universidad Nacional de Colombia. Although I designed it in 1993, it is still considered a relevant and contemporary piece of design. In the 1990s, I also produced the piece titled Estera. For this, I was charged with creating a bed, and I chose to interpret the design as an estera, a type of woven floor mat used in Colombia for sleeping, since I consider it to be the simplest item used for this purpose. Around the same time, I designed a chair titled Escalera, or ladder. This piece was proposed for the Luis Ángel Arango Library in Bogota and meant as part of the public library's architecture. Escalera was a finalist in the open call competition for designers titled La Silla, or the chair. My work from 1996 is marked by a significant change in medium. At the time, I had established an attachment to raw earth materials. Yet this new project allowed me to challenge myself with a material I had regarded earlier with contempt. A hostility for the cultural archetypes of futurism, speed, and the industrialization of aeronautics, which I considered antithetical to my work and to the communities of indigenous craftspeople. I wholeheartly defended, led me to begin weaving with aluminum. I really had an aversion to aluminum. I believe that the world should be, all of Colombia, should be built from tropical guadua, MACANA, wood, and oxidized iron. Challenged by the aluminum, What I did was engage in an investigation of basketry techniques from the different regions of Colombia. I had worked previously at the Colombian Crafts Arts Fair, Expo Artesanías, so I knew a lot about the subject. And I wanted to decontextualize the wicking technique from the basket, change its proportions, the materials, and its function. Subsequently, I created immersive works of architectural proportions, employing basket weaving techniques. I also applied the same weaving methods at a smaller scale to produce a series of woven silver and gold-plated bronze jewelry. One of these large-scale works remains on site at the Recinto del Pensamiento Park in my hometown of Manizales. This particular piece, titled lienzo or canvas, is unusual for when the viewer is immersed within the 11-foot-tall structure. They experience a feeling of peace and calm. Lienzo is made of a material that is not usually associated with peace, much less relaxation or leisure, but instead speed. This project represents a groundbreaking time in my work, to the extent that I often refer to the chronology of my work as pre-aluminum and post-aluminum. Starting again from my encounter with aluminum, warming up the aluminum with the spirit of basketry, this project is titled Cestería, Estructura, Espiritual, or basketry, spiritual structure. Then I began working with electric cable. There's a piece titled Mami, What is the Fastest Speed? From a series knitted from electrical cable, because this was my response to my eldest son. When he was around 7 or 8, he asked me to speed in the car, and it would have been reckless to go beyond my comfort zone. He asked, "Mommy, what is the fastest speed?" And I answered, "The speed of light." I realized then, my domain is not about speed. My work is calm and slow. My realm is concerned with the small details. My world is about giving time to time. I realized I'm going to knit that speed, and I'm going to make it slow. So I then made this series, which are in a warp and weft weave, a plain weave in taffeta, and other pieces using tatting, frivolité, or knotted lace edging techniques. There are others from this series not included in the show, but they were made as 2-needle knittings in which the electrical current passes through the weave, which was a slow process, and instantly illuminates a light bulb at the end. There is a series that I exhibited in the Goodman Duarte Gallery, known today as the LA Gallery, titled In-PRODUCTIVIDAD, in which I set out to weave brochures from the sphere of economic production and fast-paced marketing, using slow manufacturing techniques from basket weaving and multi-strand braids, which included banknotes. I fashioned large-scale braids using 1,000 peso bills and another out of $1 bills, mixed with digital impressions of the dollar bill. Since, as we have learned from the Disney universe, this is also a world of fantasy. There's a project from 2005 titled Naive, in which I wanted to bring together the realm of industrialization with the delicacy of mothers and female needleworkers. I did not have much time available to embroider things for my children, but I made the point, a joyful experiment, to embroider a few bibs for my children in cross-stitch. In this Naive series, I also pay tribute to, for example, the indigenous Mayan women of Mexico who embroider tablecloths, of which it is difficult to understand how they manage to charge what they do when they dedicate so much time to their craft. Later, we applied embroidery techniques in galvanized steel onto sheets of cold-rolled steel, polyurethane ribbon onto neoprene sheets, and of galvanized steel on aluminum. They are naive figures from the realm of tenderness of those mothers.
Hay otro proyecto que se llama
There is another project called Pua, or Barb. Included in the exhibition, there are two works that I do not remember well if they were from the same series or two. They are essentially individual pieces. One is about barbed wire, and as I am mildly autistic, I mean, it is not that I have been diagnosed as autistic, but autism is it exists along a spectrum, and I would say that I have autistic moments when creating my work, in which I concentrate on observing things, and while observing, I remain silent and deep in thought, to the point that I do not hear what is around me. While looking at the barbed wire, I realized this epitomizes hostility and aggression. Therefore, there were horrible concentration camps in World War II surrounded by barbed wire, and barbed wire is used in buildings to protect them from intruders. That wire is itself a type of spiky knotted rope, a machine-made material, yet it is a beautiful weaving technique. Also, then, I wish to exaggerate it, using the thorny spikes for great expression, and that is why I chose to make weavings out of the galvanized barbed wire. There is also a piece titled tapete, or rug, which uses a hand-knotted rug technique, except it is made with wire of stainless steel on oxidized or rusted steel. In 2006, I was invited to participate in a show titled Cromática. It was a conceptually lighthearted show. The gallerists, Luis Aristizábal and Jairo Valenzuela, wanted to, let's say, deviate from the intellectual aspect of conceptual art and instead assemble a show dedicated to the senses. However, I am, let's say, a little serious and a tad transcendental. And so I asked myself, but what is the significance of color in my work? What can I produce in color if the color of my work is determined by the materials in which they are made? The integrity of the materials, the medium speaks in my work and I express myself through technique. So I said to myself, consider the flag. My work represents my love for Colombia too, so the flag is color. The flag speaks through its color. I remember that when I worked in Expo Artesanías in 1993, they had sent me to work in the autonomous indigenous territories or cabildos of Caldas, near Río Sucio, the cabildos of Cañamomo, Loma Prieta, and La Montaña. I was taken there by an admirable young driver and assistant to the Comité of Coffee Growers of Caldas. We were driving through the mountains of Río Sucio, Caldas. It was during the afternoon drive, as we were going to be working together for 2 days. That he shared with me that his brother was a guerrilla fighter. I said to him, I can't believe that. But if you are such a beautiful and special person, I think that Colombia needs a president just like you. How is it that your brother is a guerrilla fighter? And he shared his story with me. We were many children. We had no opportunities. My parents could not provide well for us. And the guerrillas arrived to offer him work. And he was tempted. He accepted, and he joined the guerrillas. This was in 1993. And in 2006, I thought, the world is not divided between good and bad. The world is divided between people who have opportunities like me. I am privileged with a beautiful family, a beautiful marriage, beautiful children, surrounded by love everywhere. However, not everyone has the same opportunities that I do. And I was set on weaving a type of flag that Colombian peasants would want to weave. Campesinos who lived with landmines 3 feet from their homes or along the path to their school. I also wanted to change the staff ornament from a spear to that of a dove. I wanted to make a very innocent, very simple flag. A flag that said, that campaigned for those same peasants and announced, I want peace. I want to be allowed to safely milk my cow. I want to be able to grow my coffee. I want my children to learn to read and write, to study freely until they become honorable, decent people that have opportunities. We took this project to the protest marches. I went out to march in protest of the FARC, organized by the foundation I Am Colombia. Afterwards, I gave one of them to the then Defense Minister Juan Manuel Santos, who, under his leadership, brokered the non-violent release of Ingrid Betancourt. Later, the minister's wife, María Clemencia Rodríguez de Santos, called me to tell me, excitedly, that they were debating who got to keep the gifted flag and whether they should keep it at their home or at the ministry. Subsequently, when Santos ran his presidential campaign calling for a government of national unity, I sent him a large flag, approximately 8 feet tall. 6 months later, I received a call from Mrs. Santos, the newly installed First Lady, who, excited, and in tears, thanked me for what she considered her favorite piece at the presidential palace. And so she became a great standard bearer for the flag. I suggested we send a flag to Cuba in 2013. During the early stages of the peace talks, I wanted to make a powerful statement of support with this work, and so I sent a medium-sized replica, a somewhat generously scaled desk flag. I sent one to each of the participants seated at the table of the Havana peace negotiations, including members of the FARC, the members of the Colombian government, and the guarantor countries. The flags were accompanied by a personal letter, including the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe, due to a personal experience of divine intervention with the Virgin, and as an expression of my affection for indigenous peoples. I proposed in my letter that similarly as the Virgin of Guadalupe had proposed, the Mexican people weave their ideas together into one. Ideas held between the Spanish conquistadors and the indigenous people so that there would be no more loss and sacrifice. Similarly, I suggested they weave their ideas, no more bullets, no more deaths and loss. The invitation was to weave their ideas in peace. Approximately 3 months later, I received a letter from the FARC's Peace Commission. In which they admitted that they aspired to weave their ideas to reach a consensus, that they wanted to weave the needs of the poor, that it was very important for them to receive the support of the citizens. Anyway, this is absolutely a unique letter that represents my personal and professional heritage. I am aware that what I did is somewhat contentious. I know the FARC's letter is controversial, but it is a fact of my work. One of the last notable things that took place in 2015 is that the First Lady and her husband, the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Juan Manuel Santos, delivered the flag to Pope Francis during a politically challenging time for our country. A year before the peace accords were actually ratified, the Pope gave his blessing for peace in Colombia by placing his hand on the flag. This is something incredibly special for me, knowing that my project transcends history. The flag, which is titled entreLAZADA's Colombian Peace Flag, lives on. Sometimes it is more humble or silent. When I know that it needs to remain quiet, I keep it subdued. And when I think it is pertinent for the flag to have a voice, I make it speak. I put it to task. For President Juan Manuel Santos' second inauguration, the First Lady proposed that we give away 2,000 flags. We were given a month and a half to produce them. It was challenging, but we managed with a team of 80 people. During the event, within the courtyard of the Palacio de Nariño, I went from group to group, instructing attendees to exit through a particular door where they would receive a gift. During that assembly, something very special occurred. A man who spoke only English and was accompanied by a translator of indigenous descent asked me, "What are they going to give me?" I answered, "A surprise gift. But tell me what? I'm not going to tell you. Tell me what it is." "A flag." "What is it like?" "It has yellow, blue, and red vertical ribbons woven with horizontal ribbons in yellow, blue, and red." And what I want to say with the flag is that we have to interweave our ideas to reach a consensus, because we do not gain anything by knitting ourselves amongst ourselves. We must weave ourselves with our opposer, with the other. He then said, "Please make a flag that is different from those raised by the young people of the world, who think they have nothing more important to do than go out to the streets to destroy." I responded, I had already thought about making an international flag with several woven colors. "You have a deal, and I will do it." I created it in 2014, and I exhibited it in New York in 2015. My works are often stored for 5, 10, 15, or 20 years until someone wants them. This tends to happen. In 2019, I found myself in the middle of nowhere during a layover in Dallas, en route to Madrid from Bogotá. When I landed, I noticed that several women from my Colombo-Italian connections were trying to reach me and let me know that an Italian art collector wanted to purchase my international flag. It is titled INTRLACED World Peace Flag. This was a memorable day as I was rushed to complete the transaction from a Fort Worth brewery where I was able to get Wi-Fi. By the end of the exchange, I became friends with the mysterious Italian collector, a young entrepreneur from southern Italy who started from nothing, completed his studies with scholarships awarded from different universities in Europe and throughout the world, and Argentina as well. And today, he owns a company that manufactures airplanes. When I asked him, "But where did you meet me? How did you know that this flag existed?" he responded by sending me a photo of himself greeting President Juan Manuel Santos at the Vatican 4 years earlier. Since 1996, I have believed and applied this vividly in my work through the idea of the flag, that weaving is patience and calm. It is thinking, meditating, it is giving time to time, intertwining ideas to create deeper thoughts, and interlacing them to promote coexistence. Weaving is peace. Peace is something we all need. Intermingled ideas build a united body of work in which the differences are enriching. My goal is to weave wealth with poverty, joy with drama, power with need, theory with experience, reason with sensibility, skepticism with faith, because one can weave many things. We move on to the artworks produced after 2006. There is a project titled Prestige, which has a French title, because I believe being a European designer is a useful asset for affecting the world. Thanks to colonialism, we assume that everything European is good, and in contrast, we as Chibchas, indigenous groups, and Afro-Colombians are not as adequate, and we must therefore imitate Europe. So in this project, I have woven the monograms of luxury European brands, such as Cartier, Chanel, Dior, Tu, and Louis Vuitton, in a contrast of mediums, straw brought from the Pacific lowlands, mixed with aluminum, while not luxurious, is shiny. These are pieces that express the contrast between the intrinsic modesty of indigenous or Afro-descendant artisans and the Western cultural heritage that has colonized the world. There is a subtle piece titled Fantasy. I have brought the most important piece from this series in which I interlace various brochures from the amusement parks of Orlando, Florida. Precisely because these theme parks give tribute to those cultures of the world, but through fantasy. I wove these brochures from a world of fantasy using a truly ancestral basketry technique. I have also included a piece of notable interest since it is a multiple-strand mesh assembled from 21 materials. The piece is titled Línea de Vida, or Lifeline, and it includes materials that tell the story of any one of us. Paper bills in various currencies, bronze, aluminum, and copper that address the topic of goldsmithing, of industrial development, the gold and copper alloy called tumbaga, children's books. Lifeline includes the gridded notebook of an elementary schoolboy, hand-drawn in color. It has a book on physics, meditations from the Bible. Well, it is assembled from 21 items that represent elements of our life from all aspects, and the braid itself is like a path or way of life. There is a piece from the Threshold series, a liminal work that stands between design and art. A series of artworks titled Deco, made of human hair in the spirit of African tapestries. The average person believes that a work of ethnic design is something that promotes indigenous or Afro-descendant people, as if we too weren't a bit indigenous and a bit Afro. In these compositions, I used hair acquired from hairdressers in Bogotá and turned the material into small clusters or cadejitos, similar to those used to make doll hair that are rooted and glued into plastic heads. Well, that's how we inserted them into the wood. They are labeled deco because they appear as decoration, but in reality, they are works of art. There are also a few batons or staffs from the Power series. I made 12 originally, but I discarded all but 2. Women's hair is an instrument of power, for men also, but notably for women. That is often why women dye their hair blonde, to look Caucasian, to resemble someone who belongs to the culture of power. So I saved only 2 batons, one which is made from my natural hair. I don't dye my hair. And the other, made from naturally straight hair, belongs to someone who would be considered an icon of beauty. When I was younger, straight hair was the more widely accepted style. In 2015, I decided to search for my Jewish roots without knowing that I had Sephardic ancestry. I took an online course at an Israeli university and produced several pieces in which I searched for commonalities between Catholicism and Judaism as part of our common history. I wove the portrait of an ordinary Jewish girl and the face of a Jewish man, inspired by a BBC documentary on the forensic facial reconstruction of a first-century male skull that could have been the face of Jesus. I wove the two faces in bronze and aluminum, and then in wood. When I began working on them in wood, I wanted to title the piece Morenito and Morenita, respectively, to make the point that Jesus was not the idealized white European man we have been advertised. Instead, Jesus was a humble Middle Eastern man, a carpenter who for years walked in the sun throughout Israel. And likewise, his mother Mary. She was not the woman of flawless porcelain-like European skin that we venerate. Mary was a dark-skinned Middle Eastern girl. That is why I'm happy to call them Morenito and Morenita. In 2016, I worked on a project called Uno, or Self, which interrogates how we understand peace and what our attitudes are towards peace. How do we connect with our peers? In what way do we mesh with those who think differently than us? There is a piece back here called Sinergia, or Synergy, which discourages us from engaging with only like-minded equals, and instead encourages us to come together with others who are different, those who think differently, who live differently, and who have been born otherwise. In 2017, and even today, I find myself revisiting the ribbon with which I first began to weave the multiple strand braids in aluminum, the foundational weave of the volteado hat, an iconic Colombian heritage craft piece of cultural significance. And I'm paying homage to the patterns of the volteado hat in a project known as Sinu. One of the projects begun recently, although I'm working in tandem on several projects at a time, is the ANIMALMAS project, in which I weave portraits of animals. I started with Ceci Arango who was my brother's cat, and I referred to him as my cat nephew. I read a comment by a group of scientists who claim that behind the activity of animals, which appears to be instinctive, there is something that goes beyond that and does not necessarily correspond to their primal need for food. There's another recent project I've begun work on titled Kanjis. I don't even know what title I will give to them once I have completed the series. My oldest son lives in Japan. I have an affinity for Japanese craft culture, as is my love of ancestral cultures for Colombia and throughout the world. And I have been studying Japanese similarly doubtful as my ability to learn Hebrew. However, it helps me realize my work and implicate myself with ancestral Japanese culture. The recurrent use of aluminum seen in many of the pieces included here recalls the presence of my youngest son, an airplane pilot. My daily surroundings also have much to do with engineers and technology, counter to all the weaving and the many ancestral cultures. Since 2011, BASURORO, or gold debris, a domestic refuse and waste project, has been a very important part of my output. BASURORO addresses environmental concerns and engages with issues of social change. My teaching workshops are held within communities such as Tumaco, Ninca, the Sierra Nevada of Santa Marta, southern Bogotá, Honda, Tolima, fishermen. What I do is guide them through ways of working with recyclable materials, which they then weave into different basket works. The BASURORO work included in this show, combined with the Cuetlatzupe series of roses woven from recycled aluminum cans, represent my submission to the 2019 World Textile Art Organization, International Biennial of Contemporary Textile Art, which took place in Madrid. BASURORO was awarded a second-place prize in the category of interior large format.
último proyecto
The most recent project I started is a project of woven leather portraits. It is precisely the hide, the cowhide, that suggests the color of human skin.
Es un homenaje a esos personajes que han sido.
It serves as a tribute to those who have been weavers of peace, who have championed the defense of equal rights for those communities which I support and defend.
De esas culturas a las que defiendo.
I have completed Morgan Freeman, but I want to work on Mandela, Gandhi, and other figures. I imagine other Nobel Peace Laureates, but also people who, little by little, I will decide are relevant to the series.
The most
important thing in my work are the craftspeople and artisans, and the social work that is at the core of my work. I am not the one who labors. I develop the idea. I teach people who are not trained artisans how to do the work and empower them to hone their skills. An example is Sandra Echeverri, my primary assistant, but also Sorani Echeverri, Diego Galeano, and many other traditional artisans who now know their craft well and who contribute to my work.